everybody. Welcome to another episode of Conquer Stage Fright. I'm live on location in Boston. I am teaching at the Mark O'Connor Berklee College of Music Summer Strings program. Today you'll be learning to conquer stage fright from one of the coolest, nicest human beings I know, Tracy Silverman, an electric violinist. He started out as the first violinist in the Turtle Island String Quartet doing some really jazzy rockin' arrangements. And he's gone on to be a soloist. He's got a wonderful band called Eclectica. These days, you're very likely to hear Tracy play electric violin concertos with orchestra. He's written 2 concertos himself, and has also had concertos written for him by Kenji Bunch, as well as legendary composers Terry Riley and John Adams. Tracy gave us so much good information that I'm actually having to split this into 2 episodes. So here is Tracy Silverman interview part 1. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Conquer Stage Fright. Today I've got a special guest, Tracy Silverman, whom the BBC calls the greatest living exponent of the electric violin. No exaggeration. And the thing that I really want to share with you is some of Tracy's perspectives, because Tracy, I've seen you perform in many different situations, and it doesn't matter if you're playing a solo with an orchestra in Carnegie Hall, or if you're playing in a women's prison, or a small black box theater, or a classroom, you are so at home. And it seems like many of us, when we perform in front of an audience, it's challenging to be ourselves, but whenever I see you, you're you, and you're comfortable being you. And give us some insight into that.
Well, thank you very much. And it's always gratifying to hear that from people, because, boy, I sure don't feel comfortable sometimes. I actually, am a good candidate to talk about this because I get pretty serious stage fright. And it's so funny because everybody thinks I'm so relaxed on stage, and I guess I really kind of put on a good show somehow, but I'm dying inside sometimes.
Really?
Yeah. And I get super sweaty, cold hands, which makes it hard to play the violin. So I've really thought about it a lot, and I have to, because I frequently, the day of a concert, it's very typical for me to get into this whole frame of mind of like, why don't I just give this up? This is just, I don't need this stress. This is I don't want to do this to myself. This is really difficult. It actually takes me to that level where I'm thinking of stopping performing. And then as soon as the concert's over, the feeling is gone, the cold hands are now warm, and everything is good again. So there's definitely some nerves going on there, and there's all kinds of psychological reasons, and I blame it all on my parents. But nevertheless, we can't fight being nervous. And so one thing I've learned is that don't fight it, accept it, deal with it. So I have some strategies that I use that will hopefully be helpful to people. They're somewhat helpful to me. However, I have to say, I do usually have to deal with a certain amount of this discomfort anyway, and just power through it. So, that being said, one of the things that I'll do is, and you've probably heard this from other people, is breathing.
Actually, no one's talked about that yet.
Is that right?
This is a pretty new series, so you can tell us whatever you want to as far as breathing secrets.
Okay.
That's...
Well, what works for me, and somebody taught me this a long time ago, is to do this sort of, conscious breathing where I'll just take a deep breath for 5 or 6 seconds, hold it for 5 or 6 seconds, and then exhale for 5 or 6 seconds. Or as long as the 5 or 6 seconds doesn't matter. It could be 10, it could be whatever you're comfortable doing. But the important part of it is to exhale fully. So you get rid of all of your oxygen as much as you can, and it looks kind of silly, I'll demonstrate it, and then refresh with oxygen, let that soak into your blood system, and then completely get rid of it. So here's an example. I'll go like,
And in through the nose, and then
More or less,
hold it,
yep.
then out through the mouth.
And I'll just really struggle to. And even when you think it's all got, just keep pushing it out.
Yeah.
And you know, it's amazing how much better that makes you feel. It's just weird. So,
You know what that's actually called? Residual air. It's like a certain amount of air that never actually leaves your lungs because
Right.
you know you have this vacuum that keeps up. But that's part of the trick is most people don't even tap any of that,
Right.
and so they've got all this old deoxygenated
and you're
air.
only filling half of your
Yeah.
lungs each time. So you want to really get fresh
Yeah.
oxygen. Now there's, you know, it's because of the fight or flights, the whole thing. And so somehow when we get that oxygen into our brain, it helps because what's happening when you're nervous is your heart is racing, your adrenaline is pumping, your body typically is not getting enough oxygen. So you are actually suffering from a lack of oxygen. I forget what the word for that is. And that actually makes your body go into a sort of panic mode, which is exactly where you started, and it increases that. So the first thing you do is physically stop that cycle by getting on top of the oxygen. So that's the first thing I do whenever I'm feeling that feeling. And that helps a lot. And that brings me to a point where I can be a little more rational and start thinking about the psychological part of it without being in the sort of panicky mode of psychological, which you can't really think too clearly when you're in that frame of mind.
Hey everybody, I've got some exciting breaking news for you. This is Tracy's brand new CD, Between the Kiss and the Chaos, which is the title of his second electric violin concerto, which here he's playing with the awesome Calder Quartet. There's also a number of other movements on this CD of Tracy doing some really amazing looping work with his electric violin. It's available officially February 25th, 2014, but you can pre-order it today at Amazon. I've got the link in the comments below. Let's get back to the interview.
So then I read a fantastic book by Janet Esposito called Overcoming Stage Fright. And among many things, aspects of it that she spoke about, one of those things is that really sunk into me is, this idea of being judged. And that's really what it comes down to. I don't know, for me, I guess for most people, is we're afraid of making a mistake and looking like a fool. And we're sure that whatever, little mistake is going to be the end of the world, and the consequences are way out of whack with what. So she said, look, first of all, the people who are watching you, your audience, they, for the most part, except for, maybe one or two stray, like people who are, want your gig or something like that. For the most part, the normal audience they don't want to see you nervous. They don't want to see you screw up. They're not really judging you. They want you to do your job well, to be comfortable, to enjoy yourself so that they can have a pleasant experience. So they are not in this judgmental place that you think they are. So to really just understand that, first of all, is very important. And as part of that, to realize that this fear of being judged comes from a very egocentric place. This place that we kind of cower into as part of ourselves, which is defensive and fear-based, and which is, afraid of being judged. That's fear. And the idea, when she said, think of that as your reptilian brain. This ego, part of your body, is this part of you that's fairly kind of low in your, psychological development, as it were, and you're better than that. And what you need to focus on is the idea that this audience wants to be moved. They want an experience, a wonderful experience. They're there to be transported, and they don't want you to be thinking about all this egos. They want you to get into a sort of a higher chakra. They want you to be in a place of transcendence, and you can't get there if you're caught up in this reptilian brain. So just rise above that and realize that it's your job to, as a good performer, you need to just find a way to a higher place, and that this is beneath you in a way. Don't get caught up in that. They don't care about that. And it's so true, because the performances that are good performances are ones in which I'm able to transcend that somehow. And when I'm really self-conscious, I'm generally not freed up to get where an audience wants to go.
So, a question I have for you is, between that earlier in the day feeling of freaking out or wanting to quit and the cold hands and the successful end, what are some things, in addition to breathing, that happen, even like when you're on the stage, that help you to get to that more transcendent performance?
I'm glad you asked that, because there actually is something that I tend to use. I notice when I'm not in the groove, not in the zone, that my rhythm tends to be not quite right. And that's one of the first things that I'll notice. And I'll also tension, like as a violin player, I'll sense tension. I'll notice that a note cracked when it normally wouldn't crack, that kind of thing, like a scratchy sound. Or I missed a note that I shouldn't be missing because there's tension here. So I will notice these things. I'm monitoring myself carefully for tension. And as soon as I see it, I'll remind myself to just, physically relax, if possible.
How do you do that in the moment? Because I've definitely been in performances where it's like my forearm is gripping and locked up, and I don't have a moment's rest for about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find that moment or way to unlock. What do you?
Well, one of the things I'll do is play a little quieter.
Okay.
Use less bow. Don't try to project so much. Just chill a little bit. Loosen up the vibrato. There are things that sometimes I'll practice. At home, I'll go through the motions of being tense just so that I can relax. And tense up and then relax. So you learn how to actually, the feeling of letting go of your muscles.
You know what? That's a really good bit of advice. I never did that exact thing, but one thing that I actually did once when I was in college, I used to get so freaked out by adrenaline, especially for juries, because juries at the end of the semester, that's when you're playing and totally being judged, and it's not even for an audience except,
it's
whoever
about
the
being
faculty.
judged.
It's about how, because that's the purpose of the jury, and that's also why they sometimes have them to say whether, some schools will have a sophomore barrier where if you want to continue as a performance major,
you have to pass.
You got to pass that, and that makes it excruciating. But and I don't necessarily recommend this, but just to sort of see that I could deal with shakes or adrenaline, I would actually drink about 3 or 4 cups of coffee, and I was not a big coffee drinker or caffeine person, and so it would have a real wired effect. And so I would wire myself and then play through my stuff, and then in a couple of things. A few things would go wrong, and so it would show me what parts I still needed to work on. Yeah. And the other was I kind of built the confidence that even if I'm wigged out or wired a little bit, I could get through what I need to do. But I think that notion of actually saying, okay, let's simulate the tightness or the tension and play this passage, but let go. That's something that I'm going to try.
That's somewhat effective. Kind of just getting the feeling of releasing. Other things that you reminded me of that are fairly obvious but often get overlooked. Get some sleep. Don't be sleep deprived. It's really hard to not get emotional or irrational. If you're sleep deprived. Drink lots of water. Make sure you've had something to eat. You're not hungry. Don't blow blood sugar. Sometimes performances get delayed. You're later than you think, and you're really you're just physically not up for it. You have to really. Stepping on stage. It uses an incredible amount of nervous energy for somebody like me. And so I really have to be ready to go. It's like you got to be ready to run a race. And so I'll often take a nap in the afternoon if I can. And usually for some odd reason I can, even if I'm nervous. Sometimes because I've used so much nervous energy, I'll just lay down and I'll just even 15, 20 minutes, and it makes a huge difference.
Thanks for watching, everybody. For additional help and exclusive content on Conquering Stage Fright, subscribe to mytalentforge.com, where I've uploaded videos on everything from overcoming cold hands to developing your posture to reducing physical tension, and the best secrets I learned from my Juilliard professors, my professional colleagues, physical therapists, as well as just experience, as well as a lot of stories that I don't want to post to YouTube, but I'm happy to share with subscribers. So again, that's mytalentforge.com if you'd like additional help conquering your stage fright. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.